And so this year we have allocated about $25,000 to invest in local and startup social enterprises. And really our hope is that you will walk away with the tools to launch more social enterprises in our Central Valley. And so my name is Carlos Huerta. Again, I serve as the Associate Director at the Center for Community Transformation, and I have the pleasure to host you today. And so why do we focus on social enterprise? The reality for us is that Fresno itself is number one at many things. However, it's never often the top of a lot of great lists, right? Between unemployment, economic, social, and racial disparities, we see education and clean water and other environmental issues like clean air just highlighted in Fresno's, if you will, history, but also present day today. And we have really come to accept that if we continue to do what we've always done, we're going to end up with a lot of the same. And so this has really sparked, if you will, a hotbed for innovation in our Central Valley. I mentioned Fresno because that's originally where we focused on, but really we have opened up SparkTank itself to focus between Bakersfield and Merced. And so those where those funds will be allocated and controlled. And again, we see business itself as vital to community well-being as well as community transformation. And so the vehicle of social enterprise captures both business and impact. And Alex will talk a little bit more about that today. The other reality is when people have great ideas but don't have business track records, startup capital is either inaccessible or super expensive. And so we want to take a risk on risky ideas that actually will transform the community. We like to say community members solving community problems through business. And so we're glad you're here with us today. And ultimately, we're reducing the risk and increasing equity in our communities, in our neighborhoods, ultimately for the shalom of our neighborhoods in the Central Valley. So just to give you a quick run through of how this works. So today is the second workshop of the Social Business Plan workshop. We hosted one yesterday evening with another group, and this will be the same one. So if you're wondering if you missed anything yesterday evening, it's actually the exact same workshop. And from here, our hope again is that you'll have a better understanding of what's going to take to apply to SparkTank. And I do want to clarify that we are looking both for startup ideas. So if you simply have an idea that you haven't advanced but have always dreamed of starting, this is the right place for you. If maybe a year or two into your business, or maybe even a little bit farther, but you're looking to expand operations, you're looking to add an arm to your business, is actually the right place for you as well. And anything in between are valid proposals for SparkTank itself. The deadline this year to submit your proposal is February 28th or 24th, excuse me, which is actually 3 weeks from yesterday. And we have really stripped down, if you will, a traditional business plan to something a little bit more simple that will hopefully be quicker to complete. But Alex and myself are available to answer questions and support you in that process. I just ask that you don't reach out to us on February 23rd because almost everyone else will be doing the same. And then part of our process too is that after we've received your submissions in the next few days, our judges and our team will be reviewing these proposals. And by March 5th, you will actually receive confirmation whether you've been accepted to pitch in SparkTank or not. Because we receive many applications every year, unfortunately, we cannot accept all of them, but we will accept many of those applications submitted to pitch at SparkTank. And then on March 10th, it will actually be pitch day. Traditionally, SparkTank has been a public event. Anywhere from 150 to 200 folks attend a pitch competition where you pitch in front of a panel of judges. Because of COVID, we're not going to gather 150, 200 people this year, but this will actually be an online private event where you yourself will pitch to a panel of judges via Zoom. So a virtual pitch fest. To keep everyone safe. But we will move forward with our pitch competition just in a different fashion. And then part of SparkTank actually, and the monies that are invested in our startup social enterprises is we will require those businesses to participate in our accelerator program. Traditionally, a $500 fee for the Social Enterprise Academy. We will scholarship those who do get accepted into Spark Tank to participate in the Social Enterprise Academy. So it's not like we're going to take $500 from the money invested in your social enterprise. We'll actually cover those fees as well. And the Academy is also something that is open to the public. But again, something that does charge a $500 fee. And from there, then we'll go to launch day. And maybe you've already had your social enterprise active and such, but really this is more of a public declaration of like, hey, here I am, look at the great work that we're going to do together. And it's really a well-attended day and event where really you will tap into the CCT network, our FPU ecosystem as well, where people will get to hear about your business. And every year we hear from our entrepreneurs how much business they really do get from the beginning when they do launch at Spark Tank, as well as really, again, following that you will build from the beginning. I take a deep breath because I know I dumped a lot on you guys here. And so hopefully you guys are still here with me. And we'll come back to this at the end, especially if you have any questions about it, but I don't want to take too much time from our guest presenter. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce him here. Let me make sure you have host functions, Alex. But I'm going to go and introduce Alex Hussain. So Alex Hussain has been a great friend and partner I've worked with for almost 5 years now. And so here at the Center for Community Transformation. Alex, one of the brightest minds that I'd say here in the Central Valley, works currently at Bitwise Industries here in downtown Fresno. Is currently working on his 5th social enterprise idea. And so when you talk about serial entrepreneur, I feel like I'd identify Alex sort of as one. And part of what I've admired Alex is even his brain in helping us build our accelerator program, the Social Enterprise Academy. So I often call Alex the brainchild behind the Social Enterprise Academy itself. Part of what makes Alex so special is just his deep network, as well as his deep commitment and passion to connect founders or starters of businesses to each other and wrap resources around them. The other reason why I like Alex is because we have a similar sense of humor, and he thinks John Mulaney's hilarious. So I recommend him on Netflix, by the way, if you haven't watched him before. But without taking too much time, Alex, I'll go ahead and hand things over to you, and I'll moderate questions along the way in the chat. So feel free to stick those here, guys. But Alex, thanks for being here.
Perfect. Thanks, Carlos. All right, let's see. Let's make sure. All right, I think I've taken over the screen share here. Perfect. Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. And yeah, thanks, Carlos, again for the intro. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you all and share a bit about what I've learned, both from those who know a lot more than I do, and also from personal failure points I've had along my journey as a social entrepreneur. And so we're going to cover a few things today. First up is what social enterprise is and why I think it's a great option for impact and for business. And then we're going to spend the rest of the time breaking down the steps to starting a social enterprise, and also breaking down each question in the application for Spark Tank. Many of the questions relate to each of the steps, so we're going to do both at the same time along the way. A few quick notes. When it comes to Spark Tank, like Carlos said, we're looking for social enterprises at many different stages. So if you have a brand new idea or you're pretty far along with your business, you should definitely apply, and we want to connect with you and help resource you however we can. And then, yeah, as Carlos mentioned, you get a copy of these slides in the next 24 hours, hopefully. So don't worry about trying to write everything down. And it's also being recorded, so you have even that way to look at the content as well. And then you can feel free throughout the entire time together to throw questions in the chat box as we're going. Carlos will keep track of them, and we'll gather for them at a few different breakpoints. And then there may even be some points where he presses pause and we address one that needs to happen in that moment. So my goal for you today is to leave confident in the next steps for you to build your social enterprise, and for you to be really prepared to apply for the CCT's Spark Tank competition. So with that, let's get started. So what is social enterprise? Let's get started with the basics here and break it down. And why should we care about what social enterprise is or what it can do? So we're looking at social enterprise because there are really big problems in the world. From the street in our neighborhood to the planet as a whole, our world has a lot of big problems that affect people that we care about. And whether it's your faith tradition calling you to care about this problem, whether you know someone who's facing a big problem in their life, or whether you've gone through painful experiences and don't want others to have to go through that, many of us want to do something about these problems that we see. And we all know most of these problems can't be completely fixed by a social media post for awareness or a GoFundMe donation or an afternoon volunteering. And I mean, none of those are bad things, and those can be really good. But a lot of these problems that we're talking about need a solution that, one, makes a big enough difference, and two, makes a difference that can last. And I think social enterprise is a unique model to solve these big problems because it provides the ability to grow as big as you need to in order to address the size of the problem, and also the ability to make money so that you can keep going. Now, these are big statements, so let's dive a bit more into what a social enterprise actually is and what this means in real life. So, getting started with the basics here, what is a social enterprise? The simplest definition we use is a social enterprise is a business that exists to solve a social or environmental problem. And there are two parts here. So you got the social environmental problem and the business. You could say, well, a lot of businesses have a mission statement. So what's the difference here, really? Well, something that separates social enterprises is that they exist because of this problem in the world that they are trying to solve. Most of the time, the problem is really the inspiration for the social enterprise in the first place. And something to remember for all social entrepreneurs out there, the better you get at both business and impact, the more impact that you will make. So let's talk about both of these here for a second. Social enterprises care deeply about both components, impact and business. And so they set goals for both, measure progress for both, and make improvements in both areas. And some people might say that these two components are two things that don't mix well together, like oil and water, or say that it runs into a game of tug of war where you have to choose whether to focus on business or impact. But in social enterprise, you can shape your model so that impact and business can actually complement each other, and your decisions can benefit both at the same time. The best social entrepreneurs become awesome at solving problems in the world that they care about, and also awesome at building successful businesses at the same time. So to get a bit more specific, let's look at a few types of social enterprises. In social enterprise, there are three broad categories of how you can go about making an impact. So we'll go through a quick definition of each and then hop into some examples to get a real life picture of what it can look like. The first type is an embedded model where the focus is on the product or the service. And let's use a really simple metaphor. Let's say you are a farmer and you grow vegetables. In an embedded social enterprise model like this, the vegetable itself is what's solving the problem, probably by someone eating it. Maybe they are lacking certain nutrients and your vegetable provides the nutrients that they need. The second type is the integrated model, where the focus is on how you run your business. So using that same farmer metaphor in the integrated model, what solves the problem is how you grow the vegetables and or who you hire to grow and pick those vegetables. Maybe the way you grow your vegetables takes carbon out of the air or pollutants out of the air and puts it back into the ground. Or maybe there are some local young adults who were feeling hopeless and now you're providing them with a job that they can do and a sense of a direction for their future. And the third type is the integrated, the external model, where the focus is on how you give back with what you have left over. So in the farmer example, you take the money left over from selling your vegetables and use those profits to solve whatever problem you're addressing. So maybe you donate money so that the schools can buy more books for the students. So these are three basic categories of social enterprises, but let's look at some examples to show what a social enterprise looks like, how it works, and how they solve social and environmental problems. So here we'll give one example for each type of social enterprise that we just covered. The first example of social enterprise is a community music school founded by Eric and Sheena. They saw that local junior high students had little to no access to music instruction, and also saw that overall their after-school programs were really lacking. Eric and Sheena were the program directors of the music department at Fresno Pacific University, so they had a skill set that could address this need. They then got in touch with the school districts and found a way for the school district to pay for the music classes so the students didn't have to. So they saw the need of these students, and then they found a customer who would pay them to provide these services so the students didn't have to pay. So while they were giving great music lessons, they were also solving the school district's problem of needing to put certain funds towards quality after-school programs. This is an example of an embedded social enterprise where what solves the impact problem is the actual product or service that they are providing. The second example of a social enterprise is Neighborhood Industries, founded by AP and Brian. Now, they saw the amount of people in their neighborhood who didn't have a job and had multiple barriers to employment, who just needed another chance and some professional development. Some of these people were coming out of homelessness, some were coming out of rehab, some had been out of a job for a number of years. So they started a thrift store to provide affordable goods for residents in their neighborhood and started training and employing those neighbors with barriers to employment. So this is an example of an integrated social enterprise. So how Neighborhood Thrift runs their thrift store by hiring these certain employees and equipping them solves the problem that these employees are facing. And the third example of a social enterprise is Lana Coffee. So a church in Fresno, California spent some time in Thailand and saw that some of the villages in Thailand needed access to clean water and also at the same time needed people to buy their coffee beans so they could stop having to grow opium just to make ends meet. So they had the idea to buy the coffee beans from these farmers, roast those beans in the US, and then sell those beans to churches, coffee shops, and restaurants. And then with the profits from selling these coffee beans, Lana Coffee has been able to pay for new water wells to provide fresh water for these villages in Thailand. Interestingly, the church first started by trying to start a nonprofit, but it was never really successful in buying that many beans, and it couldn't really donate any profit back to build the water wells because there was no profits being made. But once a local social entrepreneur took over the organization and changed it to a for-profit model, it steadily grew to where it is now, selling over $1 million a year in coffee beans. And honestly, this is a great example of how in social enterprise, getting better at the business side directly increases your impact as well. So Lana has most significantly grown its revenue by selling to coffee shops, restaurants that serve a lot of coffee, and retailers like Costco, actually. These customers want a craft coffee from a local company. And on the impact side, in 2019, the water wells that they built with their profits will provide 7 million gallons of clean water over the next 20 years. So again, this is an example of an external social enterprise. So how Lana Coffee uses their profits, solves the problem of a lack of clean water wells in certain villages in Thailand. And I should note real quick that Lana doesn't build these clean water wells themselves. They send their profits to a local organization in Thailand that builds the water wells. So most social enterprises that fit under the external model here send their profits to another organization that has the experience and local expertise to do the impact-oriented work. So from these examples, you can see the difference between these social enterprises and a traditional nonprofit approach to solving social and environmental problems. In a traditional nonprofit, you're looking for donors and grants to fund the work that you're doing. In social enterprise, you're looking for customers to partner with you by paying for your product or your service that you're offering, which allows you to continue doing the impact work and actually increase your impact as you serve more customers. So neither is inherently better than the other, absolutely. We're just really excited about the potential that social enterprises have to scale up in size and stay more sustainable over the long run. There are also some differences we can see between social enterprise and the traditional business model. First, there's the difference in why money is made. In traditional business, money is often made because that's the primary goal for the business. But in social enterprise, money is primarily seen as a tool for creating more impact. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong, for sure, with making money and just stopping there. You're likely providing jobs and providing services that people want, and those are both really good things. And at the same time, social entrepreneurs would likely see this as just a missed opportunity to then go and use that money to make a difference in the world or in this problem that they care about. Another difference is that for social enterprises, impact is so integrated into the business that it is measured and has goals to hit to the same degree that traditional businesses track money and make financial goals. Social enterprises choose to set goals and measure for both finance and impact. And lastly, the origin story is usually different between the two different models here. For social enterprises, their inspiration for existing comes from solving a problem in the world that they care about. So again, to summarize why you should consider building a social enterprise, I believe it's because you can grow as big as you need to and make the money you need to change the world, or maybe more realistically, at least change someone's world. And honestly, I could end it right there. Just let this be a motivational speech, or I could turn to the next slide and sell you my online course for $27.99. But that's not what's going to be most helpful for you. And that's also not what Carlos told me to do. So I'm going to do neither of those things. And instead, let's get started talking about how we can build our own social enterprises. So it's a good question, right? How do we even get started? And if you've ever tried to start a social enterprise before, or any type of business at all, you know how overwhelming it is to try and figure out everything about your business idea all at once. In my opinion, that's what makes writing a traditional business plan so difficult, where you have to write dozens of pages pretending like you know what's going to happen in the future. In my experience, I've found it not to be the most helpful for aspiring social entrepreneurs. And that's because in the real world, you have to do small tests as quickly as possible to figure out if your business idea is going to work or not. And if you can't, and you really can't afford to waste a bunch of time. So because of this, I've designed something for y'all called the 6 steps to building a social enterprise. This takes the best parts of a traditional business plan and lays it out in a practical and effective way so you can test your ideas quickly. Stop wasting time on unnecessary things and make sure that you're always pointed in the right direction. So quick question for everyone here. Who here has unlimited time to spend on this? So put your name in the chat box if you have unlimited time to spend on your social enterprise. Awesome. I don't imagine that we'll get too many people's names in there. So since none of us have unlimited time to work on this, let's figure out what's the best use of our time. And I mean, I say that as a joke, but this is something that almost all entrepreneurs struggle with, whether they are focused on impact or not. What should I be focused on? My hope is that the content that we're going through today will help with that. And the best feedback I've ever received from these steps was, I didn't know what I needed to focus on or do next, but now I know exactly what I need to do next. We've heard that multiple times for people who've gone through this workshop, and I hope that it's that same level of help for you as well. So today we are going to go through a shortened version of this content, but you can get more in depth into every part of this process by joining us at the CCT's Social Enterprise Academy that Carlos mentioned, and also by checking out previous recordings that we did last year. And Carlos will share those YouTube links probably in the email that you'll get in the next day or two here. And while we go through these 6 steps, we're also going to be going through each portion of the Spark Tank application so you can present yourself well to the judges in the first stage of the process. Now there's $25,000 going out to social enterprises this year, so listen close and let's get started. All right, even though you are currently muted and maybe you're sitting by yourself, and maybe you're watching the recording of this 3 years from now, I want you to read these out loud with me. So step 1, find a problem. Step 2, talk to customers. Step 3, brainstorm solutions. Step 4, build an MVP. Step 5, improve your MVP. And step 6, find more customers. Okay. There are a few things to notice here. You might notice that the problem comes first and the solution comes later. Absolutely. Their problem first, your solution later. Their problem first, your solution later. Problem first, solution later. I know I'm being ridiculous repeating that, but you have no idea how helpful this is and how hard it is for most entrepreneurs as they get started. In this process, you don't even really start thinking about solutions or what your idea is until step 3, and we'll talk about more why later. And you might be asking, what the heck is an MVP? That's a great question. That's startup lingo, so welcome to the club. It stands for minimum viable product, and it's basically the simplest thing you can build to solve your customer's problem. The cool thing about MVPs is that it's the best way to get started and for you and your team to learn about the customer's problem that you're trying to solve. And one thing that I hope that's very clear is that this whole process works whether you're building a product or developing a service. So if you're selling basketballs, tutoring children after school, or you don't even know yet, this should hopefully work really well for you. And the step that we're going to spend the most amount of time on is step 1, find a problem, because it's so foundational for the whole process. It takes a lot of work for this to become second nature, and because it's the step with the most Spark Tank application questions related to it. So let's get started. All right, so starting with step number 1 here in the process, find a problem. Remember, we are starting here. We're starting with finding a specific problem that someone has. So if you came here with an idea for a social enterprise, let's take a second to think about that idea. Where did your idea come from and what inspired it? Hopefully what inspired it is that it's coming from a problem that you see someone has. Now, if you can't think of a problem that your idea solves right now, that's no problem. Let's keep going and the connections may start to form. But before we can go any further, we keep talking about problems, but what on earth is a problem? And here's a few different ways to think about problems that may help. A problem can be a pain point, a frustration, or a difficulty that someone has. And here we're focusing on a point of friction that someone has and determining that this is really a problem for them in their life. Another way to think about problems is to imagine the other halves of these sentences that you may hear. I wish such and such. This would be better if XYZ. Can you believe blank? That's just not right. These are all examples of key phrases that we and others use to talk about our problems or the problems that we see. And clearly, if you want to look at some of the most severe problems in our world, you can look for examples of injustice or inequality or oppression. These are problems that likely tug on our heartstrings the most. And maybe one of these is what brought you here today. Now, to provide a bit more clarity, here are some example problems that I came up with. So first, I have so many things to do every day and I can't keep track of it all, so I end up forgetting some of them. Second, I want to eat healthy, but I don't have enough time. Third, I have a record, so no one is willing to hire me. Or fourth, I can't drink the tap water in my neighborhood because it's so polluted and toxic. So let's all take a second to think of a problem and let's put that in the chat box here in Zoom. It could be a problem that you have, a problem that you see someone else has, or a problem that you think you're trying to solve here with your social enterprise. So we'll take a second here. All right. So keep thinking of problems, and if you think of some, feel free to throw them in the chat anytime, but we'll keep rolling. All right, so quick question for you all. What would you rather try to solve, a broad problem or a specific problem? For instance, some examples of a broad problem include homelessness or reducing waste. On the other hand, some examples of a specific problem include homeless veterans need transitional housing for 6 to 18 months to help them get back on their feet and qualify for specific services available to them. Or many rural schools and apartment complexes can't afford to have their recycling picked up in remote locations, so they have to throw it in the trash. Now, which one would you rather try and solve, the broad one or the specific one? In my opinion, it's better to narrow in on a specific problem that someone has. With broad problems, it's hard to know where to start. It's hard to make a meaningful difference and really move the needle. And it's hard to not waver from idea to idea. But with specific problems, you can find a much more clear place to start. You can make a meaningful and measurable difference with the problem you've addressed. And it's easier to stay laser focused. So we want to make sure that as we learn more about the problem, that we're narrowing in on a specific problem that someone has. And as you may have already noticed, in social enterprise, there are two types of problems we have to solve. We have the impact problem and we have the business problem. So the impact problem addresses a social or environmental issue. You can think of it as your cause or your North Star. It's typically easier to care about, and it's probably what inspired your idea and inspired you to join us today. The impact problem usually feels like the heart, the mission, or the purpose of the business. and it can be a rallying point for your team to remember why you're doing this in the first place. And some of your customers will want to buy from you because of your mission. Not all of your customers, but some of them. On the other side of the coin, the business problem addresses a business pain point. So here you're finding someone who will pay for the product or service that you're offering. And this is the engine of your social enterprise per se. The business problem is where you make money so you can stay alive and grow. And we actually have a phrase around this idea: no money, no mission. More money, more mission. It gets funny after you say it 100 times, but it's really true. In social enterprise, growing sales grows your impact directly with that. So going back to our main two problems here, because we're going to be focusing in on specific people, we're going to use these names to help keep it clear: beneficiary and customer. So people who experience the impact problem are our beneficiaries, and people who experience the business problem are our customers. So the example of Lana Coffee, the beneficiaries are the villagers who get clean drinking water, and the customers are the stores that buy the roasted coffee beans. Now, your goal here is to develop an incredibly deep understanding of both problems, business and impact, and then to become great at solving both of those. You want to be constantly improving at both understanding the problems and solving them. So using an example from earlier, for community music school, the beneficiaries are the students getting the music lessons, and the customer is the school district paying for these music lessons. But sometimes the two can be the same person. For example, with the Headspace meditation app, the beneficiary and customer are the same person. The person paying for the meditation is also the one receiving the mental health benefits of meditating. This can happen too, and either way is totally okay, as long as you can make it work for your social enterprise. But let's pause for a second. If finding a problem is so important, how do you make sure you found a problem? One of the best ways is by scratching your own itch. So here we're talking about personal experience. Many people would say this is the best way to find and solve a problem, whether it's the impact problem or the business problem that you go with, or both, because you know the pain point yourself and you know how your potential solutions would work out or not. Next would be what you observe in the world around you. Maybe this didn't happen directly to you, but it's still something that you've seen. And another way is by taking the second step a step further and engaging your empathy into other people's experience. So listening to their stories or observing their actions and empathizing with what you think may be a difficult experience for them. And honestly, empathy is so very important if you want to start a social enterprise, or really any business for that matter. Empathy is how you step into the shoes of someone so you can understand and feel their pain point that they have. And if you can't do that, it's really hard to build something for them that will actually solve their problem. But even if you can find a problem that someone has, how do you find the right problem? How do you know if this is an important problem for them? How do you know if this is a problem where you can make money? How do you know if this is a problem that's the right fit for you and your team? These are your questions. These are some questions that you and your founding team should really think through early on in this process. So I've gathered some questions here that should be really helpful for you all. So these two gentlemen, Michael Seibel is the CEO of Y Combinator, which is one of the world's best known business accelerators for new businesses. And Eric Ries is the author of The Lean Startup, which is really a transformational book that has helped to shape both leading thoughts around entrepreneurship and new business, as well as a lot of the content that you're getting here in these sessions. So these questions were designed with a business problem in mind, but I think that almost all of them can help evaluate impact problems as well. And remember, again, you'll be getting a link to this PowerPoint in the next day or so. So don't hurt yourself trying to write down all these questions at the speed of light. So let's get started with these. Number one, how intense is my customer's problem? Number two, how often does my customer have this problem? Number three, do my customers know that they have this problem I'm trying to solve? And number four, how many people have this problem? So I love the first two questions here. Anytime you're thinking of a new idea for a business or a social enterprise, ask yourself, how intense is the problem I would be solving, and how often do they have this problem. Those two are just a great mental checklist to run through any idea right away. Obviously, you want it to be more intense, more often. Yeah, those are the answers that you're looking for here. Now for the next four. So number 5, are they willing to pay for me to solve it? Have I experienced the problem myself? And if not, am I close with anyone who has experienced it? Can I build a solution for that problem? And how easy is it for my customers to find me or for me to find them? Now, I would actually run through these 8 questions with you and any team members that you might be doing this with for both the impact problem and the business problem that you land on. It's really important for you to figure out if both of these problems are worth trying to build a social enterprise around. And just a quick note around this, the problems that you choose don't have to be problems that no one else has ever solved before. It doesn't even have to be very original. Just make sure that as you're going through this whole process, you're really focused on their problem as you're improving your product or service, as you're figuring out marketing and sales language, as you're going through any aspect of building your company. If you're more focused on their problem than the other potential solutions they can go with, it significantly increases your chances that you'll build something that they want more, and then they'll end up buying it from you. So let's take a quick break from the 6 steps and go through a few questions from the Spark Tank application that have to do with finding a problem. So first up is, why are you starting this business? There's a similar question that I like asking 3 times. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And why are you doing this? So what's your motivation? Why are you deciding that this is what you want to do? And then why is this the best option that you want to go with? And so similar, like, what's your motivation here? Why are you so compelled to do this when you could do something else, or you could do nothing at all? And what are you hoping to gain from this? We want to know that you'll keep doing this when things get hard. So these are some of the questions we're looking for in this question. Second question is, what's your vision for this business? What do you see this social enterprise doing? Where do you see it going? Where do you see yourself going in this social enterprise that you're building? And if your social enterprise were to grow to your wildest dreams, what would that look like? And what impact would it accomplish? Third question, what problem are you solving for your customer? And why does your customer want to buy this? So here we're focusing in on the business problem, not as much on the impact problem. And with this, when you answer here, be as specific as you can. Remember, we want to narrow in on a specific business problem. So use as many adjectives and specific nouns as you can here. Enough so that we can clearly understand the problem and what it would feel like, even if we've never really experienced it ourselves before. The fourth question, what social or environmental problem are you solving? So this is your impact problem. So again, here, be as specific as you can, narrow in on the specific impact problem, get those adjectives and specific nouns in there. And yeah, make it so we can feel what it's like, even if we haven't experienced it ourselves. Fifth question is, why did you choose this social or environmental problem to solve? And have you experienced this yourself? From what I've seen, when entrepreneurs are more connected to the problem, either on the impact side or the business side, they're just a lot more likely to succeed. So tell us about the connection you have to this impact problem and why it's so important to you that you're going to push through the challenges and the impossibly difficult stretches to build this social enterprise. Next question is, what from your experience and background has prepared you to start this social enterprise? This might be the most interviewee question we have, but building on the last question, do you have the skills and any of the experience necessary to contribute to your portion of the business? If you're going to be responsible for selling things, have you ever sold anything before? If you're going to be responsible for the finances, have you ever kept the books before? Tell us about the skills and experiences you have that's prepared you to set on this journey. And in addition to that, you may have some personal experience or a turning point in your life that has just created this fire in you where you can't not do something about this issue. And if you haven't addressed that in the other questions in your application, we want to know about that fire inside of you as well. And seventh question here, if there's anyone else on your founding team, tell us about them and their role in the company. So in the last question, we've gotten to know you a bit. So now tell us about any co-founders you may have who are starting the business alongside you. What do they bring to the table that you don't already have? And why does having them on board make you more likely to solve the impact problem or the business problem? And overall, why do they make your social enterprise more likely to succeed? So these are not people who cheer you on, people who agreed to help out from time to time, or people you bounce ideas off of. These are people who are as invested as you are, probably putting in similar hours as you, and probably deserve some equity ownership of the company. And if you don't know what equity ownership is, that's totally okay. Reach out to us and we'll walk you through what that is and what that can look like. So we've covered a lot of ground in the last chunk of time here. So we're going to take a minute or two, stop and breathe, answer any questions that you might have. Big exhale I saw from Carlos there. So yeah, we're just going to hit pause here. If there's any questions, feel free to unmute or to throw them in the chat, but we'll just take a second to pause here.
No questions, Alex. That's okay.
That is totally okay.
That means you're doing a great job so far.
Yeah, we'll go with that, right? No, absolutely. No, if there's no questions, then yeah, let's keep rolling. All right, now we're headed into step 2 of the process of building your social enterprise. So now that you've found a problem in step 1, we're going to move into step 2 to give you the basics you need to start talking to your customers and beneficiaries about the problems that they have. So the concept of just talking to people can be pretty broad. So when we talk to customers or beneficiaries, what's the best way to actually do that? And what are we trying to figure out when we do talk to them? So here's a few notes that should help guide this for you. First, you should only be talking to people who have the problem. Right now, you're trying to learn more about this problem, and you really only want the perspectives of people who have the actual problem you're trying to solve, impact, or business. So talking to your mom or your best friend or your coworker is not what we're really going for here, unless they actually have the problem that you're trying to solve. And I'll say the only exceptions here are talking to somebody who's an expert in the area. So let's say you're talking to a social services worker if you're trying to serve lower income families, or you're talking to a therapist if you're trying to serve people who have experienced trauma, examples like that. And while those might be incredibly helpful people to talk to, you absolutely need to hear about the problem from people who experience it firsthand. Second, the goal is for you to listen, not talk. This is about you asking questions, not pitching your current idea. And I'll explain more about that in a second. Third, when you talk to them, start really broad and ask open-ended questions. This is because you want to let them lead you to their most intense problem in this area that you're interested in. So only focus in with your questions as they lead you and as you become interested in something specific that they're saying. Fourth, let them lead you to their problem. So avoid the temptation to try and lead them to your solution by asking leading questions. And something to note here, these are really, really early conversations. And so they almost never end in a sale, and that's really okay. If their problem is super severe and they're ready to pay you that day to try and solve it, I mean, that's great. But the main goal of these first conversations is learning in depth about their problem. And remember, your solution that you've got in mind is your current best idea to solve their problem. But the foundation, the most important thing, is their problem, which you're trying to discover more about here. So to learn more about this problem, you're going to find some people who have this problem you're trying to learn about and start an open conversation with them. To help guide you through these conversations, I've gathered 5 questions from Heaton Shaw and Eric Minjikovsky that I've seen to be super, super helpful. You'll use these questions to open up a natural conversation with them. And even though you have this list of questions, be sure not to get so stuck on your list of questions that you forget to have a natural, engaging conversation. So the first question is, what is your #1 challenge around blank? And question number 2 is, can you tell me about the last time you had this problem? In my opinion, the first 2 questions out of the 5 are the most important. These are going to point you straight to the gold mines of information. In the first question, you're going to have to figure out how to fill in the blank, obviously. You need to describe, the blank is going to be a description of their problem in kind of a general way with as few words as possible. So as an example, when I was building a personal finance education app, we filled in the blank with managing your money. So we asked them, what is your #1 challenge around managing your money? And in the second question, when you're looking to understand more about the situation, it's really helpful to understand the story and the narrative around their experience and when they experience this problem. Their answer here will give you a lot of context, so you can later figure out a good way for your solution to be the superhero in this story of theirs. So here are the 3 remaining questions. Number 3, why was this hard? Number 4, have you tried anything to solve this problem? Number 5, what don't you love about the solutions you already tried? Now, these are not quite as pivotal as the first 2, but they can also be really helpful, especially if the conversation isn't flowing very naturally. So the 3rd question is asking them to describe the friction or pain point in their own words, which is really helpful to understand, especially using their words. And the 4th question is doing 2 things here at the same time. First, it's giving you a list of competing solutions that you should look into and see how you compare. And then second, it's letting you know whether this problem is important enough for them to have actually done anything about it. If they haven't tried anything yet to solve this problem, you don't have to give up and find a new problem, but it might be a sign that this problem is not that intense for them and not something that they're really willing to do something about. And the 5th question, it really helps you know what you would need to prioritize in order for your solution to stand out against the competition. So with this question, they're basically handing you a to-do list of things that they would want. And again, with these 5 questions, don't be so rigid or stuck to the list. After you ask the person one of these questions, they probably opened up some doors for you based on what they said, and you should try to walk through them. And remember, you're trying to learn more about their problem, as if you're falling in love with it. So be obsessed with their problem and resist the urge to tell them right away about this great idea for a solution that you have. And also in these conversations, they are going to tell you what their biggest pain points are and what specifically you should be solving for them. And when you're having these conversations, so many things that you didn't expect will become clear. You might figure out a new name that you want to name your social enterprise that your customers will really respond to. You might figure out how to word your social media posts or your marketing messages better. You might figure out where you can sell your product or service and what you should say when you sell it, and more things like that. So again, listen closely to what they say and use that information to guide all of your decisions. So, all right, now that we've figured out how to talk to customers, let's take a pause again and go through some of the related Spark Tank questions. So first one here is describe your target or typical customer. After you have a few conversations with people who have this problem, it should be pretty easy to tell us about the typical customer you're targeting for your business problem. What are common characteristics that they share? Do they all have similar interests? Do they spend time in specific places? Do they have certain job titles? Do they work at certain types of organizations? And also, why is this a problem for them? And why do they even want it solved in the first place? So show us that you have a good understanding of who you're trying to sell your product or service to. Next, similarly, but on the other side of the coin, describe your target or typical beneficiary. So same thing applies here as the last question, but focused on the impact problem and the beneficiary instead. So tell us about them and especially how it relates to the problem that they have. Last one here in this section, do you have any competitors? Are there any other similar businesses that are solving a similar problem? If yes, tell us about them and how you will still be able to thrive regardless. Something to note, this third question here is definitely not the most important thing that you're going to find out in the customer conversations or what you should spend a ton of time focusing on, but you may learn some of the alternative solutions that people use in addition to maybe an hour or two you should spend on the internet looking for potential competitors. In this question, we're looking to make sure that you've done a bit of homework to see what you're up against, both through talking to potential customers and by doing a bit of research online. And keep in mind, when you're looking for competitors, don't just look for companies that look exactly like you and offer exactly what you offer. Look at companies that are solving the same problem you're trying to solve, even if their solution is way different than yours. All right. Now that we have found a specific problem and listened to people who have that problem, it's time for step number 3, brainstorming solutions. And here's a great quote that I think speaks to this well. It's from Michael Seibel, the CEO of Y Combinator. He says that most entrepreneurs think that their genius and their special sauce is in their solution. But the best entrepreneurs know that their genius and special sauce is in how deeply they understand their customer's problem. I think this is a huge point being made here. Deeply understanding the problem is the best advantage you can have in this business. So when you are going to start brainstorming ideas, the first thing you should do is look back at your interview notes from step 2 for inspiration to guide your brainstorming process. So now that you've learned exactly what their problem is, you really have the target to aim at. You should have a much clearer picture of the specific problem that they are experiencing. Next up is the whiteboard brainstorming technique, personal favorite of mine. So here you'll grab your co-founders and some creative friends and find a massive whiteboard. Be sure to bring some food and some drinks with you and try to have fun. So the first step is to write the specific problem you're trying to solve in the middle of the whiteboard. From there, you come up with as many ideas as you can on how to solve this person's problem and write them around the problem in the middle. And then you choose the solution idea that you want to date first, and that's your starting point. So note the word date here. We have a phrase that we use that will likely be really helpful. Don't marry your current idea, date your current idea. Your idea is just your best hypothesis at this point. So try to stay open to seeing that idea grow and change and improve over time. And real quick, I got a direct message asking if this slide deck presentation will be available afterward. The answer is yes. In the next 24 hours or so, you'll get a link to the PowerPoint and you'll have it all. So just wanted to address that. Yeah, as Carlos commented, yeah, it's business advice, not marriage advice. And really it's business advice for when you're in this stage, like early on. If you're 7 years into a business, you're a little bit past the dating period of the business idea. So yeah, that's a funny and good point as well. Okay, so the last exercise here you can try is called the 10-star exercise. It's created by the founder of Airbnb, Brian Chesky. You can Google 10-star exercise Airbnb to learn exactly how to do it. But essentially you think of something so crazy awesome that it would blow your customer's socks off in solving their problem. And then you work back from that until you reach something that you can actually do. It's really helpful to get you thinking outside the box about how you can leave a lasting impression on your customer. So these are a few examples of how to brainstorm ideas. You may have your own process, but these are things that I've seen work for many people. So again, we're going to take a quick break, go over the questions that correlate with this section here from the Spark Tank application. So first up, do you have any different ideas for a social enterprise? So this is one of the optional questions on the application, so you don't have to answer it. But here we're looking at the way that you think about business ideas. Maybe you have a different solution idea for the same problem that you're trying to solve, or maybe you have an idea on how to address a completely different problem. So either way, I mean, we want to hear about it if you have more ideas. And again, answering yes to this question is not necessary to score extra points in Spark Tank or just even to be a successful entrepreneur in general. But I want to share a quick story about a past Spark Tank participant and someone who went through the Social Enterprise Academy. Her name is Monisha Edwards. So she came in with one idea around an internship program for lower income youth. And then during the Social Enterprise Academy, she shared her idea about selling candles as means of promoting mental health. Very different idea. She ended up going with the second idea, not the one that she pitched to Spark Tank and not the one that she went through the academy with. And with the candle business, she made it so big, she was on national television on the Today Show for her candle business. An entrepreneur out of Fresno here. So again, you don't have to have a second or third idea, but if you do, it's definitely a good idea to keep that in mind. All right, so moving into step 4. Now that you've brainstormed some solutions and chosen the first one that you want to date and experiment with, it's time to start building something. It's time to build your MVP. So, but first, what is an MVP? Again, MVP is startup jargon for minimum viable product. And this is the most basic solution that you can possibly imagine that is technically solving the customer's problem. So the goal is not for this to be bad. The goal is for you to be able to move fast. So because the speed you'll be moving at, your MVP won't be the ultimate end product of your dreams. That would take too long, and at this stage would waste so much of your time because you don't know if that's really going to solve the problem or not. So we want to move as quickly as we can to really figure that out in real life. So it's kind of like a helpful metaphor or example. Let's say the problem you're working on is transportation. You're trying to transport somebody from one location to another. The MVP here would be a skateboard, not a car. You can build a skateboard much faster than you can build a car, which means you can test it with your customers way sooner. But what is the purpose here of an MVP? The purpose of an MVP is to learn more about the customer's problem based on their actions, not just their words. So in step 2, we got their words, and in step 4 here and 5, we're going to learn based on their actions, how they interact with it. And this is pretty important to remember. This stage is really helpful to see if they'll put their money where their mouth is, because remember, actions always speak louder than words. The other main purpose of an MVP is to learn as much as you can about whether your solution solves their problem in the shortest amount of time possible, so that you're moving as quickly as possible. So if you spent a year building your first version, your first MVP, you get to run 1 test per year. If you spent 1 week on each version of your MVP, that's up to 52 tests that you could run in the same amount of time. So it's 52 chances to learn and change your solution to better solve their problem. And there's a hidden key that's helpful to know as you're trying to start a social enterprise. Most new businesses that end up failing don't get crushed by competition, and most of them don't even run out of money. Most new business ideas that fail, they fall apart because the founders lost their sense of momentum and they just decided to give up on the idea. So moving quickly with your MVP here really helps to maintain that sense of momentum and keep you and your team feeling hopeful and focused. To give an example of what an MVP can look like and how it's helpful for you, I have a story to share here. So before Instacart and other food delivery services, this is a number of years ago, an entrepreneur had an idea for an app that would provide a grocery delivery service on a regular basis. So she could have spent months drawing a mock version of this app, or tens of thousands of dollars on building the first version of the app, or planned out every move she was going to do by writing a 50-page business plan. But she knew that she wouldn't learn anything about what her customers actually needed and who would be most excited about this that she was trying to build. So instead of those other options, she went to a single moms support group and offered to take their money and buy and deliver the groceries herself by hand. So how does she input their orders at these meetings? She asked them what they wanted and wrote it on a piece of paper with a pencil. How did she receive last minute order changes? They would text her cell phone. How did she get feedback from her customers? She watched their body language and their facial expressions as she made deliveries. And she asked what could be done better. And then she also kept track of who kept using it and who decided to stop using it. By doing this, she learned an incredible amount about what they needed and the problem that she was solving for them in just a few weeks, without large amounts of money spent or time wasted by building the app first or by buying special equipment. And then when she went to eventually build the app, she knew exactly what her customers needed because she had worked with them so much and had ran so many different experiments. So she knew all the features that were needed and then which ones were unnecessary or distracting. So what are some tools you can use to build your own MVP? Here are some examples that I've seen work well. The first tool is actually yourself. So whatever you have available to you, your skills, your time. So this is a concierge style of an MVP where you make them feel like they're using an app or a service or a certain type of product, but really you're doing everything manually behind the scenes. An example could be a reminder service, but it's really you just manually texting the person. Could be a delivery service, but really you're the one picking up the items and delivering them. This is a method to start testing your idea for a solution just right away in no time. And you get to experience every component of it yourself as you're the one operating the solution. So I really like the concierge model. The next set of tools are existing tools that you have at your disposal, especially ones that you're familiar with. So on like the software side of things, on the computer side, it could be a Microsoft Office product, could be a Google Drive product, Google Form or other survey tools, or a PowerPoint slideshow. It could be a saw or a basketball, I don't know, whatever already exists in the world. You can put some of those together and build your MVP using those. So get creative by piecing together a number of tools that already exist. And this last set of tools here is pretty neat. And I've actually used these before multiple times. So especially if you're going to have a website or an app as part of your business, I recommend checking out Marvel app and then a little bit more advanced Adobe XD. So both of these are app simulators or website simulators. They're really easy to make designs on. So you can take those simulations and send the link to someone or show it to them on your device, and they can try out the website or the app on their device. And Marvel app in particular has a free version. So I'd recommend checking it out if that's relevant to you and your business. So with all of these tools available to you, your goal is to take what they've told you about their problem in step 2, and then go build a solution towards that target that they've laid out for you. So, all right, now the moment you've all been waiting for. Here is your challenge for building your MVP. Your goal is to build your MVP within 1 week. And yes, I typed that out correctly. 1 week. If you want to keep moving quickly and learning quickly to increase your chances of success, I really recommend putting this together in about a week or as quickly as you really can. So here are some requirements for your MVP to give you an idea of what you're looking for. Whatever you build, make sure that it is at least technically solving the problem. I would also recommend that you try to spend as little money as possible for the first go at it, and maybe the second go. You can learn a lot without spending any money in this first week, and you can always spend more money in the future when you know more about where's best to spend that money. Now, this is kind of funny, but it's okay for your MVP to be a little bit embarrassing. For example, if you offered to have a service performed for someone and then you show up and do it yourself manually and they weren't expecting that, they might think that's kind of funny or odd, but just stay the course. Just focus on trying to learn about their problem and if this is a good idea for a solution. And keep in mind, early on, the goal in this MVP process, this beginning process here, is the goal is to learn based on their behavior. So resist the temptation to impress them with any bells and whistles that you can come up with. So that's it for the process of building your MVP. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what you all can build in a week or so. And when you get to this stage, and I'm even more excited to hear about what you learn in the next step where we'll test our MVPs. So, all right, we have covered even more ground. I think I've seen a question or two come in. So we're gonna take a second, just stop and breathe and have Carlos come off mute and we can chat through some of these.
All right, so the first question I saw here, Alex, is how important is consistency to customers? And I find that to be a great question here.
Yes, I think there is something in this process that I'm describing that can be really concerning at first as an entrepreneur, because it's like, hey, I don't want to like give somebody something that's low quality, or I don't want to do something different every week. And like people will be like, okay, I don't know if I can trust this person. So this process is honestly more about your learning than it is about those people. If you've chosen the right problem to solve, there's hopefully hundreds or thousands or millions, I guess, of people that have this problem. And if you're going to work with, let's say, 5 people to test this out with, hopefully you still have a lot more customers that you could sell to in the future. So in the future, when you have an established business, you are really firm with like the solution that you have, and whether that's a product or service, then yes, consistency and following up on your word and all that is very important. And this is really kind of like, imagine you're a scientist in the lab, and that's kind of like what this first process is. So you can be honest with them. Hey, I'm building this business idea. I see this problem that you have, and I want to see if this will work for you. So I think in this specific, what I'm talking about here with just a few people, I wouldn't say consistency is the most important thing, but you can be, honest with them and be transparent. So I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Carlos.
I would say kind of this beta test, right, is making that disclaimer of like, hey, this potentially isn't our final product. But as Alex said, this really the goal is to understand how well we're serving you and how well we can solve your problem. And from there, right, whatever you learn from that process, it helps improve their product or service, hopefully quickly, or if not over time.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I will say, if in general, right, part of like the strength of like fast food restaurants is just the reliability and the consistency of what you're getting. You know what you're going to get there. The reality is if they mess up once, you're probably going to go back. But our small businesses might not always get that same, um, if small business messes up your hamburger, you're probably not going to go back. Or you might not tell your friends about it. And so in the same way, I see even those reservations, but again, I think it's not announcing like, hey, here's my finished product and this is what we're going to be providing, because we really do see that products and services need to be high quality. Because for too long, we will say community benefit organizations, churches, and other social enterprises have gotten away with great missions and subpar products and hoping that the mission itself will sell the product. But people have kind of caught on and say, okay, that's not the reality. And for someone, who's worked with social entrepreneurs over the years, churches, community benefit organizations, there's kind of the stigma at times where people are like, oh, that's a church product, I'm not going to buy that, right? Or that's a social mission product, well, I'm not going to buy that because of maybe the items that have come before us. And again, this is why part of what Alex is really challenging us to do is to continue to test and improve the product, improve the solution, so that we really could, on one end, solve the customer problem well, but on two is acquire the customer and keep that customer for the long term.
Yeah, I think a great quote that I heard from Brian File, who's actually the entrepreneur that helped lift Lana Coffee up, is that customers, if you have a great mission and an okay product, customers will buy it once. So they will buy it one time for the mission to support you. They want to feel good. They're not going to keep using it. So as he raised the quality of Lana's coffee, they had more repeat customers, which is really something that you want to see for your business. Yeah. And then also to your point, Carlos, about the McDonald's kind of example, like McDonald's has been around for many decades. I don't remember when it was founded, but it's not unlikely that when McDonald's started, that it may have looked kind of like this, as somebody was just trying out different burger recipes, and it wasn't an international chain decades later. So yeah, again, we're talking about the infancy stage here. And then I'll quickly address another question that came in. How does targeting customers fit into this concept? I think, yeah, it's a really good question. And it is actually absolutely baked in to what we're talking about here. So I think the way that you target customers is by finding people who have this problem. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you're targeting the right customers by in stage 1 and 2, finding people who have this specific problem. Stages 3 and 4, building a solution that is for these people. And then 5 and 6, we'll talk about where you go find more people like that. So depending on what stage you're on, it's about really focusing on this, whatever problem you've decided to solve, and just finding more people like that.
And I would say, Alex kind of takes this twist of, we often have entrepreneurs who say, I bake the best pie in town, or I have the best tacos in town, right? And they have that idea, their solution, and they're hoping customers will feel the same. The harsh reality about that is not everyone always feels the same, right? And so again, bringing the solution first before the problem. And like Alex said, targeting customers really is more of a strategic approach behind Alex's point of what is the problem they're facing, both impact and business wise, right? And then how do we find more of them? And so I think that we do have, if you will, a repository of other resources with like market research, as well as target reading customers that we help our entrepreneurs work through as well. But I think that's a great question here.
Yeah, thanks everybody for submitting those questions. I think we'll get back to rolling through so we can finish our content, and we've got more time for a Q&A as well at the end. So keep the questions coming, and love the engagement that we're seeing here today. So let's see. All right. Now it's time for step number 5 in the 6-step process. So improving your MVP. So now that you've built this first version of what you're going to test with real customers, let's figure out how you actually test it and then how you make it better. So the first part of improving your MVP is testing it. So here are some best practices I've learned from others on how to test your MVP so you don't get in the way and ruin your own learning opportunity. So after you've quickly built your MVP, you're going to take it to some of these potential customers that you've been talking to, and you're going to let them use it. And from there, you'll learn from their actions and see if this solution actually helps them or not. And remember, we're only testing this on people who have this problem. So they're likely the people we've already been talking with, but just remember, people who have this problem. And then as they're using your MVP, listen to what they say, watch their facial expressions and see which parts of them are hardest for them to figure out. You'll gain more truth from their nonverbal cues than you will from the words that they choose to tell you during and afterward. So, and again, this could be a product, this could be a service, anything you can build to try and solve the problem. And while they are using it, see if your solution actually even solves their problem at all. So if they struggle to solve their problem with whatever you handed them, that's actually really helpful feedback. And good thing you only spent a week building that instead of a year or multiple years. And then on the flip side of that, now that we've tested the MVP with people who have the problem, the second part of step 5 is determining what you're going to change in order to improve your MVP. So after you've run a few tests, just take everything into account, their feedback, what you observed, and anything else that you might have gathered. So from there, you'll decide what the most important improvements are to make in the next week or the next improvement cycle. So keep in mind that when you're deciding how to improve your MVP, you have to maintain a balance between what they said, what they actually did, and whatever insights have come to your mind, either while they were using it or since. And then after you decide what improvements you're going to make, take another week or another really short period of time to implement those changes, and then go back for round 2 of testing. And now that you've got this process down of testing and making improvements, you just keep doing this week after week or day after day, getting closer and closer to the solution that will actually solve their problem, and then one that they'll hopefully pay for, or that your customer will eventually pay for. And so, you know, you may go through this a few times and you might ask yourself, okay, when is this no longer an MVP? When is this no longer a minimum viable product? And when is it actually ready for me to start selling it? And so the answer is pretty interesting, actually. The answer is when you offer to sell to someone and they say yes. I know that is like mind-blowing, but in all seriousness, you know, don't overcomplicate this. Don't get stuck on terminology here. MVP, beta testing, version testing, whatever, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Just the point is here, we're keeping it simple. We're just trying to make something that people want, and then eventually we're going to sell it to them. That's it. And with that, we are ready for our final step, number 6, find more customers. So this is where things start to really get exciting and have the potential to take off. So now that you've built something and you've tested it and improved it over time, and now customers are starting to pay for it, it's time to find more customers. So as we're trying to do that, that leads to an obvious question. How do you do that? How do you reach more people? How do you find more people, especially who have this problem? So you're going to want to find out, okay, where do people who have this problem, where do they hang out, in person or online? So people who have this specific problem, where is their attention? Where do their eyeballs spend time? And who has their attention, and why? Why is that? So there's a few ways you can do this. You can talk to your existing customers that you're working with, and you can ask if they know anyone else who would be interested. You can think about where your current and existing customers, where do they spend time? Where do they spend time, online or in person? And you can think about who has your existing customers' attention and how you can get there to find more people like them. The next option is social media. Now, we all have a million opinions about social media and its impact on society. But from the perspective of trying to start a business, this is really an incredible tool. Social media allows you to engage in conversations with potential customers at a level like never before. So there's something that you need to know about social media, especially at this point in your process, very early stage. If you're only using social media as a megaphone or as a talking piece, you're actually doing it wrong. Social media is incredibly valuable because of how it can help you hear from others that you would have never met in person. And you can actually engage with these people around the world or across the street that you've never met. You can listen to them, and you can ask them really direct questions over the social media platform. And Obviously, there's millions and billions of users on social media. So to find the right people, you just have to look around using maybe hashtags or keywords to search, or maybe a popular page that's related to what you're building. You can find people who are engaging with that page. And last, to find more customers, we have sales channels, which is just a fancy way of saying you want to build a lot of roads to connect you and your customers. And once you find more people that have this specific problem, you're really going to want to start to figure out ways to sell to them more efficiently. So that might be a social media page that links to your store or your website. That might be a local store in person where a lot of your customers visit. That might be a consultant or a salesperson who knows a lot of people who have this problem, who are good potential customers for you, etc. And so if you're interested in learning more about sales channels, Google it and do some research, or reach out to us so we can talk more about it. We don't have a ton of time to deep dive here. So, all right, we're going to press pause again, cover a few more questions from the Spark Tank application. So describe your social enterprise and what it does in 1 to 2 sentences, and be sure to include your intended impact. By step 3 or 4, and definitely by this point, step 6 in the process, you should be able to describe what your social enterprise is and what it does in a sentence. But it's not always super easy, and most of us may be at step 1, and that's totally okay. So if you need any help with that, here's a helpful framework from Irma Olguin, who's the co-founder and co-CEO of Bitwise Industries in Fresno. We do blank for blank who blank. So this basically reads, we do product or service for type of person who has this unique characteristic or this specific problem. So for example, we deliver groceries for working single mothers who don't have time to shop for all the food their family needs that week. Or we clean work uniforms for chemical plant workers who are legally required to keep their clothing chemical and odor free. There's just 2 examples. So if you're stuck trying to summarize your social enterprise into a sentence or 2, try this framework out, see if it helps. Next question is, describe how you will make money. Now you should have at least a decent idea of how you're going to do this, no matter what stage you're at. But obviously the more progress you have, the more clarity you'll be able to answer this with. And so tell us 1 or a few ways that you're planning to make money, how you know someone will pay for that, and any plans you have for growing that over time, and even maybe like literally how you're going to exchange currency between you and them. Next question is, how will you find customers and how your customers find you? I think we've addressed some of that here in the content, but it's pretty self-explanatory. But where can you reach out to your customers, especially in a setting where they'd be kind of open to hearing about your product or service? And on the flip side, how will you create pathways or make yourself known for your customers to find you? So we're just looking for your thought process and your craftiness on these. And next up is, have you sold any products or services yet? This just helps us see where you're at in your journey. It's totally okay if you haven't sold anything yet, but if you have, that's definitely a certain level of validation from your customers. So try to make this a bit more than just like a yes or no answer. So tell us a bit more either way. And finally, at what point are you in your progress today? Have you talked to any potential customers? Have you made any sales? We just want to know where you're at and what you've learned. It would probably be a good idea to use the 6 steps described here as part of your answer to help share where you are in your progress, but just give us a little explanation there. Okay, and the last section that we're going to cover today is a brief bit on finance, since money is obviously critical to keeping your social enterprise alive, and also since a few of the Spark Tank application questions deal with finances. We're going to cover a few different types of costs and then give you a helpful formula that I hope will work well for you. So the first type of costs are cost per sale, and variable costs are usually what they're called, but that's really just business jargon for your costs per sale that you make or every unit that you sell. So here's a few examples of typical variable costs: materials, time and hourly wages, and commissions to people who sell this product for you. Now, if you want more detail here, you can Google variable costs to get a more comprehensive list of examples. And just as an example from your life, think about a variable cost of how much you pay in gas. It's directly dependent on how much you drive. So if you don't drive, your gas costs are 0. Yeah, variable costs, one way to tell them from other costs is that they go up or down depending on how many units you sell. And something to keep in mind, make sure you can sell it for more than it costs you to make it. That sounds obvious from a math equation, but this is something that a lot of businesses struggle with in reality. It's not easy to do this. And lastly here, don't forget to factor in that you eventually have to pay yourself, or really your chances of success just go down really significantly. You don't have to pay yourself on day one, but if your business model stops working once you pay yourself, that's a pretty big problem. Some founders will pay themselves whatever rate they would pay someone else to do that same job. Then when they can afford to hire someone else, they transfer that pay on to the next person. So it's a pretty easy way to build a model that works. Now, the second type of costs are fixed costs. So ongoing costs. And fixed costs is what they're usually called, but that's just business jargon, again, for your costs that you have to pay to stay open for business, whether you sell 1,000 units or 0 units. So these can include renting an office space, insurance, renting equipment or machinery, salaries. So if you want a more comprehensive list of fixed costs, you can Google that. And then similarly, from an example from your life, think about how much you pay every month in car insurance. It basically stays the same every month, no matter how much you drive, just so you can have a car. So that's an example of like a fixed cost in your life. So again, fixed costs, ongoing costs, they stay the same no matter how many units you sell. And at the beginning, I'd really recommend to keep these as close to 0 as possible in these really early stages until you're making money at least. So skip the things that are unnecessary and just get what you need to test your idea and get this off the ground. And you definitely don't want to forget to factor these in, these ongoing costs and fixed costs when you're figuring out if you're going to sell enough and how you're going to make enough money. But fortunately, there's a way to calculate that, and that is called a break-even point. So again, this is more business jargon, but this just helps you figure out how many units you need to sell in order to exactly cover your fixed and variable costs, to cover all of your costs, ongoing and per sale. So this is the point where you don't lose any money or make any profits. That's why they call it break even. So you will, here's an equation that's helpful. This is the most simple equation I could find. You'll start in the parentheses. So take the sale price and then subtract the variable costs that you determine. And then you divide your fixed costs by the number that you got in the parentheses. So after you do the division, make sure that you round up to the highest whole number. So if you get 67.3, make sure to round up to 68. So with this, these numbers here, what would the break-even point be here? Vote now by texting your answer to 866-559, yada, yada, yada. So we got a sale price of $100, variable cost of $80, fixed cost of $845. And then what is the break-even point there? All right, we will move quickly here, and you might guess that I'm going to show you the answer anyway. So if you're not doing math, you were correct. If you got 43, that is correct. And the exact number is 42.25. But again, in this simple example, we can't sell less than 1 unit. So 43 is the least amount that we can sell without losing any money. So the second reason this is helpful is just because you can adjust any of those numbers, sale price, variable costs, fixed costs. You can adjust any of those and see the impact it'll have on your business. So what if you sold these items for the same amount, same sales price, and then you were able to lower your variable costs? Or what if you increased your fixed costs? You can see how many units you would then need to sell given the new numbers. And again, you can Google break-even point to figure this out in more detail, but this is the simplest definition I could come up with here. So, okay, let's get into the finance-related questions from the SparkTank application. So first up, how much does it cost you to produce your product or service, and how much can you sell it for? So here we're looking for, costs per unit or per sale here, the variable costs. And then looking back on the slide, looking back at the slide of cost per sale, Google examples, think through everything there. And then we want to know, how much you can sell it for as well. So the second question, how much you can charge for it. So whatever number that you come up with, just tell us why you came up with that number and why you think so. Next up is how much money do you need to get started? This is sometimes as much subjective art as it is math. There's no real right answer here. So we're just looking to see your thought process here. Just think through, what your MVP might cost, what fixed costs you might have up front to get started, and how much you might need in the bank to potentially pay people if you can't just do it all yourself at first. It's a balance between not wanting to blow a bunch of money up front on an idea that you haven't really tested yet, while also making sure you don't run out of money because you're trying to skimp and cut every corner. But be sure to give us more than just one number when you answer this. So list out all of the things that add up to the total amount that you think you need to get started. And personally, I'm looking more at your thought process than at any of the numbers you have in particular. And then we have, if you were to receive investment from Spark Tank, how would you use it? So this is similar to the last question, but here we want to see the actions you're planning to take with any money that you receive. And if you win money in this process, what would you do with that money? What would you spend it on? How long would that money last you? Okay, so we've covered a lot today. Appreciate everybody staying on who's here, whether it's live or on the recording. We're going to cover the remaining questions as we're wrapping up here in the Spark Tank application that didn't really fit in the previous categories. And all of these that we're going to cover right now are optional questions, so you don't have to answer them. But if you have any interesting answers, we definitely want to hear them. So have you tried starting a business before? If yes, how did it go? And how did you grow as an entrepreneur? We want you to tell us about your entrepreneurial spirit or your history and what are some experience with sales and pitching your idea. So pretty self-explanatory there. If you have any advisors, partners, or people that will be helping that are not on your founding team, tell us about them and how they'll contribute. So again, these are people who are not, you'd consider like your coworkers, but people who may be of some help, of unique help to you. If you've created a legal entity for this social enterprise, what type have you started? And then we have a list of legal entities there. So again, not necessary, but if you have created one, we just want to know which one you chose but really why you chose that one. If there's any other information or analysis you'd like us to know, please include that here. So financial analysis, market analysis, whatever you have in mind. And with all of these questions, you may not know the answer for sure. You might not be able to get this far in the next, 3 weeks or so because applications are due. But just use this process to help your social enterprise move forward. And with all of the questions, just write your current best theory, your current best idea of what's going to work and where you're at now. So we are at the end of the main content today. Thanks everybody so much for joining me through this, and looking forward to seeing if we have any more questions and if we've even answered the previous questions well or not. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So at this time, we just want to move into more of an open forum Q&A. What kind of questions do you still have pending? How can we help you in this process? We have about 30 minutes carved out for this here, but we'd love to hear any questions that you may have here. Maybe we don't have any questions, Alex, and that's okay too.
Hopefully that's a good sign. It's either really good or really bad.
Yeah. Well, if you're okay, I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about the Spark Tank process. And so I'd encourage you guys, if you have questions, feel free to stick them in the chat, or we can ask them after we're done with this section here. I was gonna say again, Spark Tank. Do you guys see my screen okay? Actually, let me reshare that so you guys can completely see it. All right, so let's try this again. So really our goal here, guys, is to get you ready for Spark Tank. And do you guys see the calendar on my screen here? And so part of what you'll see is the deadline to submit is February 24th. On our website, if you will, there's going to be a couple things here, and I want to bring that up for you. So our website, and I'll stick this here in the chat, is cctfresno.org. And at that link, you'll find our social enterprise page. Here you will find the business template needed to submit your proposal. You'll see a cover letter from us, as well as all the questions for both the written portion that are required, the written optional questions that are not required, and then the video questions for your video submission portion. And so make sure that you do include both of these, because these are both required to, if you will, deem a submission complete. If we do not have one or the other, we won't be able to accept the full proposal. The other thing that you will need to do then, and we tried to streamline this process, if you click the link and I have it here, we try to make this as easy as possible to submit both your written section and your video submission. So the link on our website does have a direct link to the application itself, as you saw me click it here. And all we're going to ask you is your name, business name, phone number, email, and then you see two different sections, one to upload your written application and one to upload your video application. And of course, Alex and I are happy to help in the process as you're getting ready to submit, write your business plan and apply. And if you're needing help to simply submit your stuff, reach out to us. Again, I'd encourage you guys, don't wait until the day before, the day of. We might not get to you on time if there are a lot of folks on the phone or via email. And outside of that, really, we tried our best, again, to make this application process as painless as possible. We thank you for being here. Hopefully, we've been able to make that as clear as possible. And keep an eye out for that February 24th date. I will say after the workshop, at some point this afternoon, we will email everyone a copy of this recording, the business plan template, as well as the PowerPoint used today. I'll also include additional resources to Alex's own workshops on MVP and building your MVP. It is a 3-part series that if you want to go at your own time, at your own pace, I'd really encourage you to do so. And then you'll see the dates concurrent from there. And then upon receiving your application, you'll receive a confirmation email from our team. And by March 5th, you will know whether you will be pitching on March 10th. More info will be submitted to each of you guys as well during this process, so keep an eye out for updates from our team. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Oh, I love seeing your beautiful faces. Any other questions, guys? We're doing okay?
You had two come in the chat here, Carlos.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was watching it while you were presenting. So how can we watch the Spark Tank this year, even though not participating? And then are either of us available for personal conversations regarding, their idea?
Okay, so first one, Spark Tank itself this year, unfortunately, will not be a public event, at least the pitch itself. But we have crafted the launch day to be a public event. And so anybody that's registered for any of our events before, including this one, you will receive an invitation to watch online. So that is a small tweak, mainly due to COVID. And so I will say that. And then are either of us available for personal conversation regarding our situation? Absolutely. Yeah. You see the thumbs up for Alex, so we'll be happy to help. I see a question. What about events from the past so we can get a good idea? I think that's Delphina. Can you maybe say a little bit more about your question so we make sure we answer it correctly?
Yeah, I just think it'd be nice to be able to watch the events that you guys had in the past, since they were so public that they recorded, and maybe we can get a video of those, because that kind of just gives you that idea of the atmosphere. And
So unfortunately, Delphina, those events, so Spark Tanks of the past are not recorded. They were live events. So unfortunately, we do not have those recorded or on our website. If that's what you were asking for.
Yeah, I was just wondering if they had some events in the past that we could look at, or
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, those were events that we didn't necessarily record. So I'm sorry, yeah, we don't have that kind of content to share with you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. It's a good question, though. Makes me regret not investing in a video team to record these pitches, if you will. Other questions, folks? And if not, I won't belabor a Q&A session.
Yeah. Carlos, do you want to mention just a little bit how they can reach out to us to have some more one-on-one feedback in time?
Absolutely. And Alex, if you want to stick your email in the chat, I'll do the same. But in the email as well, I'll include our contact information so you're able to reach out to us. Email is usually best. That way we can set you guys up here. Are there other ways to hear about success social enterprises? Absolutely. We have success stories on our website and we also have a collection of our social enterprises. What I'll do, and Damaris, thanks for that great question, is I'll actually, in our follow-up email to you guys, include a link to some of those social enterprises of the past. We haven't really talked metrics today about even the successes of our social enterprises in the CCT ecosystem. Everything from, if you will, a 58% success rate, and we deem success as businesses surviving past year 3, right, in startup success. Traditionally, 90% of businesses fail within the first year, but we're always excited to talk about the 58% that made it past year 3 and continue to scale, continue to thrive. At the same time, you know, in the last 3 years, we've invested about, I want to say about 50K across 15 different businesses. And in collection with our previous social enterprises, they have generated almost $4 million in revenue from those investments. And so those are things, and we can give you guys other examples between 2019 and 2020 of 122 people with barriers to employment hired, 7 million gallons of clean water created, over 5 million pounds of landfill waste reduced in our landfills, including the savings as well as people who were previously incarcerated and did not experience recidivism or fall back into a prison system. But again, those are things that I'll include some resources on those items, as well as, you know, we're always happy to chat too and tell you a little bit more. Alex and I are really good about talking about social enterprise. As you can tell, we're really excited about these things, and we really like supporting our Central Valley here. Did I miss a question here? Okay, great. All right, folks. Alex, any last comments or anything you'd say to the folks on the call here?
No matter where you're at, I mean, you're here for some reason, so we're just excited to hear, you know, why you're interested and whether you're watching this later or watching it now. So please reach out to us, and you know, we all were at one point at the very beginning of our journeys. So wherever you're at, like we are really excited to work with you all and help bring any ideas that you may have to life.
All right, friends, go in peace. Thank you so much. Blessings to you all, and I look forward, hopefully, to see a proposal submitted to Spark Tank from each of you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful job, Alex. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Definitely. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you so much.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye.